TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.
Over the last 20 years, with all your support, we've been able to not only launch the original MyPillow, but also the MyPillow mattress topper, Giza Dream bed sheets, My Slippers, and the MyPillow bath towels. But there's so much more. In fact, we have over 200 products, and I'm so confident that you'll love each and every one of them that when you go to MyPillow.com now, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20 just for checking out the website. No purchase necessary. Get everything from MyPillow blankets, sleepwear, kitchen towels, mattresses, duvets, pet beds, body pillows, comforters, couch pillows, bathrobes, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And remember, just for checking out MyPillow.com, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20. No purchase necessary. This is a limited time promotion, so go to MyPillow.com now.
From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Well, coming up on this Wednesday edition, despite their words, their actions in the 24 hours since House Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave the green light to an impeachment inquiry, suggests that the move has spooked Democrats. Now, the White House sent a letter to top U.S. news executives this morning, telling them that it would be a disservice to the American public for them to cover disinformation. Now, this sounds a lot like the actions that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said ran afoul of the First Amendment when the Biden administration tried to silence critics of their COVID policy. A White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said this earlier today.
It's a political stunt, and it is going after the president politically, not about the truth. There's no truth here.
You know, does this administration actually know what the truth looks like? I'm not sure they do. We're going to talk with Congresswoman Harriet Hageman of Wyoming, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. And speaking of COVID, another government whistleblower has come forward, this one from the CIA. The senior-level agency officer said the CIA offered members of a small team investigating COVID-19 origins monetary incentives to change their position that the origin was the Chinese lab in Wuhan. We're going to talk with Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia, a member of the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic. And as the reality of the Biden administration's deal with Iran settles in, even the lying legacy media is probing for answers.
This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally, we will decide, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it.
Now, that was the Iranian president, Raisi, in an interview with NBC, saying that despite claims this was for humanitarian purposes, they would use it however they wanted. But White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said this.
The Iranian people will be the beneficiaries of these funds, not the regime. The regime doesn't get to touch the money, Peter. Doesn't go to them. They don't get to decide ultimate destination, and they have no direct access to it.
So, who's telling the truth, or is anyone? We're going to talk with retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. He's going to join me for the latest on Iran, and we're going to discuss North Korea's Kim Jong-un's field trip to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. And finally, the world has unfortunately become a much more volatile and dangerous place, in large part because of the policies of the Biden administration. And one area of great concern from this administration is on the international religious freedom front. Of course, we shouldn't be surprised because it's difficult to promote abroad what your policies despise here at home. Now, Family Research Council was a part of the recent International Religious Freedom Forum in Taiwan. Ariel Del Turco, director of the Center for Religious Freedom here at the Family Research Council, was there. She joins me later with an overview. The website, TonyPerkins.com, resources there for you, contact information, and the action items that will come up in today's program. Our word for today comes from 1 Corinthians 10. Now these things became our examples to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Paul provides a laundry list of behaviors that caused the children of Israel to have their bodies scattered in the wilderness after they came out of Egypt. They lusted after evil things, a reference to the food, the garlic and the leeks in Egypt, as they complained about the manna God had provided. They worshipped idols, committed sexual immorality, spoke against God, murmured, questioning God's justice. Paul again says these things happened to them as examples and were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. He concludes by saying this, therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. That's a warning. We must be on guard so that we don't follow their example and fail to dwell in the abundant life that Jesus has provided for us. To find out more about our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible. After Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy formally announced an impeachment inquiry into President Biden yesterday for corruption, abuse of power, and obstructing justice, the Biden administration responded by sending a letter to Legacy News executives. According to the reports, the White House has urged the Legacy media to ramp up their scrutiny of the House Republicans leading the impeachment investigation. Now, we've seen the media protect this president before, notably in their coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. But with the House investigation bringing subpoena power to probe the president's bank records and other transactions, will the legacy media be able to keep all this under wraps and follow the White House marching orders? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the House Freedom Caucus. She represents Wyoming's at-large congressional district. Congresswoman, welcome back to the program. Always great to see you.
Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here.
I want to ask you about this letter that the White House is sending out to the legacy media, telling them basically to scrutinize Republicans, not to pass on disinformation. This sounds a lot like what they just got slapped for by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in their collaborating with social media to censor Americans.
Well, you know, Tony, I think I'm going to need to buy 100 copies of the Constitution and have them hand-delivered to the White House so that they can actually read the document that they are supposed to be following and that they swore to uphold. The First Amendment very clearly states that they can't do what it is that they're trying to do, yet they continue to try to deflect attention. What I want to say about this is that the American people are entitled to know the depth and the scope of the corruption of Joe Biden and how he has sold out the United States of America. What do I mean by that? To what extent is our foreign policy being dictated by the agreements that Hunter Biden negotiated with the Chinese Communist Party? To what extent is he continuing to try to send billions of dollars to Ukraine because of the arrangements that Hunter Biden and the deals that Hunter Biden cut in Ukraine? We have got to have a better understanding of who is controlling the White House and why Joe Biden is making the decisions that he is. This impeachment inquiry is to get to the bottom and expose Joe Biden for what he is.
So, Congresswoman, I want to ask you specifically to inform our listeners and our viewers, what tools and information will now be available that was not available prior to this inquiry of impeachment?
It's my understanding that we will be able to actually force some of these agencies to produce the documents that will uncover exactly what it is that we're talking about and expose this information. The other thing is to be able to bring more witnesses in to testify in front of us and allow us to ask the questions and expose, for example, the emails. We do know that Joe Biden was using other names on his email. He was using other email accounts that were not under Joe Biden's name to conduct official business, to include Hunter Biden on official emails with folks from under the Obama administration. So it's going to give us broader authority to actually gather the documents to show the American public what Joe Biden has been doing and how it has affected national security and the decisions that he has made.
So previously, you were able to get some of the banking records from Hunter Biden. but the president basically protected. But now that you have the impeachment inquiry, even his records will be accessible to the committee, much like what we saw with President Trump, where there were 2 impeachment inquiries, and they had his IRS records and all types of information, which some of them released to the public.
You know, one of the things that really strikes me about this is that Joe Biden continuously professes that he has not done anything wrong. Yet at every single turn, he has attempted to thwart our ability to understand his relationship with Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's companies, as well as his interaction with foreign malign actors. So you would think that a gentleman who wants to come clean, and he wants everybody to believe that he's been completely above board, would provide us additional information about, for example, the 20 sham companies that were set up by Hunter Biden and other members of the Biden family to pour money from one account to another account to another account to another account, money that was coming again from the Chinese Communist Party, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Romania, and these other countries that are not exactly our friends.
So, Congresswoman Hageman, this question for you. Do you think, based on what you've seen so far, you're going to find enough evidence here that would lead to an impeachment of Joe Biden?
We're going to follow the facts. We're going to where the facts lead us. But I believe there's already sufficient evidence to demonstrate that Joe Biden is completely compromised. I think when you look at the documents from the Hunter Biden laptop, you will find exactly what I'm talking about. And what I'm referring to are things such as his email to his daughter saying, I had to give half of my money to dad. I wouldn't make you do that. So it's those kinds of things that I think we absolutely already have the evidence. The whistleblowers and the information that they have provided has been extremely important.
Yeah, I think from my days as a police officer, I think there's enough there for probable cause to get a search warrant. And that would be getting this information, that the banking records, to see where, in fact, these statements lead. Did he get that money? So I think you're absolutely right. If I've got time, I want to switch to another topic very quickly. Today, Senator Marco Rubio sent a letter to the FBI talking about scandal and cover-up. Well, back in January, the FBI gave testimony. The FBI director gave testimony regarding the letter that came out, or the report that came out of the Richmond field office, targeting Catholics for their ideology, which they said was radical. This was the traditional Catholics. So now it appears that the FBI director is saying this was just in one place. It now appears that this was coming from multiple FBI locations.
We are uncovering those facts. And it wasn't just in January that he testified to that. He testified to that effect in July in front of the Judiciary Committee. And he repeatedly said that it was just one office, that it was a rogue office, that there was nobody had ever authorized that letter, that they were not targeting Catholics, they were not targeting traditional Catholics. And we now know that he lied to Congress. We now know that he was dishonest both to the Senate as well as to the House in terms of what they have been doing in targeting the traditional Catholics and infiltrating churches. You know, Tony, this ought to frighten all of us.
Yes.
Again, the First Amendment is there for a reason. And the First Amendment, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press, the freedom of association, the freedom to assemble, all of those things are so critically important. And then when you have the government who is targeting people because of their Christian beliefs, their religious beliefs, you realize that you have a government that's gone completely rogue.
I think you're absolutely right. This, as you said, should frighten every American, that they were producing these reports. And I was wrong. The date that the report came out was in January, but that they're targeting people of traditional Christian faith in this country. You're absolutely right.
In this country, in the United States of America.
Yeah.
That is based upon Judeo-Christian values. The idea that our government would be attempting to infiltrate Catholic churches is really, it is so far beyond anything that I ever expected I would see out of our federal government. And here we are.
Yeah. Congresswoman Hageman, always great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us today. Great to talk with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony.
All right, folks, coming up on Washington Watch, did the CIA pay its own analyst a bribe to change their position on the origins of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China. I mean, stuff's crazy. This is the Biden administration. This is the deep state. Yeah, we are in a spiritual battle that's manifesting itself like never before. Don't go away. We're back with more after this.
In recent years, Christians have seen an accelerated assault on not just our core beliefs, but their very foundation. Now is the time to build on that foundation, strengthen our faith, and learn how to translate our beliefs into actions that engage the culture around us. That's the purpose behind this year's Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. Believe and engage. Pray, Vote, Stand Summit is a national gathering of spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives, or SageCons. We'll hear from Christian leaders, worldview experts, government officials, and more. We'll discuss important issues like the sanctity of life, religious freedom, protecting students, strengthening families, praying for our nation, and how you can impact America's future from a biblical worldview. Together, we can believe and engage. Join us September 15th through 17th in Washington, D.C. for this pivotal event. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday for Washington Watch. All right, this is a big week. We've got the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit coming up Friday and Saturday. Great lineup. We're going to have former President Donald Trump, former Vice President Mike Pence, Governor Ron DeSantis. We're going to have a host of other leaders, congressional leaders, as well as a number of religious leaders, pastors. We're going to have Pastor Jack Hibbs, Gary Hamrick, and others. So be sure and if you can, join us. There's still time and there's still room, but you're gonna have to register soon. Go to PrayVoteStand.org to find out more and to register. As I mentioned, according to House Coronavirus Subcommittee Chairman Brad Winstrup and House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner, a senior-level CIA officer with decades of experience testified to members of Congress that the CIA offered a monetary bribe to agents investigating the origins of COVID-19 to change their conclusion that the virus originated from a leak at the Wuhan lab. Now, you'll recall that both the FBI and the Department of Energy released their conclusions that the virus most likely originated from the Wuhan lab. So what was behind this? Why would the CIA want to cover up their own findings? What were they afraid of? Who were they trying to protect? Where does this go back to? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Rich McCormick. He serves on the House Armed Services Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, as well as the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Georgia. Dr. McCormick, welcome back to the program. Great to see you.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
So what do we know about this potential CIA bribe and cover-up so far?
Yeah, so what we've heard is, some of it's not specific, but basically 6 out of the 7 scientists originally stated that they thought that this was from a lab leak. And it makes sense. As a scientist, as an ER doctor, not much else makes sense other than a lab leak. Then suddenly they changed their opinions based on essentially a bribe. They were promised a bonus if they would reconsider and say, no, we think this came from a natural, of course, such as a bat or a dog or whatever you want to say it came from. The fact of the matter is it never made sense from the beginning because China put a considerable amount of effort into proving that it came from a natural source, which they could never prove. If it came from a natural reservoir, then it would have still existed. That's how viruses exist. They continue in the same species, but we've never been able to identify that whatsoever. So the only remaining natural theory that makes sense is from the lab leak, from a lab that, by the way, remember, said we were going to do we want to get funding for this advancement of technology so we can actually have gain of function. We said no. They did it anyways. Usually when you ask for that kind of funding, they've already started anyways. Right. It was embarrassing to our government. In my opinion, Fauci covered it up because he was embarrassed that we're funding it to begin with, even if it was with or without our permission. Why the CIA got involved with it would have to have been some sort of direction from the president. Otherwise, I don't know why they'd want to cover it up, quite frankly. And that's what we got to get to the bottom of, is the next step of why there was such a cover-up. Why would the CIA get involved in pushing their thumb down on the scales of justice and figuring out what actually happened? That's what's really worrying people all the way around. When the government comes in and they have an issue that has nothing to do with getting what's right and just, not finding the truth, but just playing politics, that always worries us. From the beginning of time, from the establishment of our country, we've had a deep mistrust of government, and especially when they do these sort of things, it just makes us more worried.
Well, being on the subcommittee, the select subcommittee on the coronavirus, you've heard a lot of testimony, look at a lot of documents. Is it reasonable to look at this and say, was the CIA possibly covering for China?
It sure is troubling to think that. I mean, why would they? I think it's because we have been in coercion unwittingly. I think it makes us look very dull in our investment in the Wuhan lab, where they did something that literally cost multiple countries millions and millions of lives of their citizens because something that we're funding. Like I said, I don't think we wittingly went into this and said, we want you to do gain of function. We're authorizing that. But the fact is, we were funding it, whether we wanted to or not. And I think that's where the cover-up came. And as you know, most problems come from cover-ups, not from honesty.
Right. So what are the next steps for the subcommittee that's looking into this now that you have this information?
Well, let's find out who got those bonuses. Identify those scientists, bring them in, make them testify so they actually have to have an honest conversation and enlighten us on who gave those bonuses, who offered it. Specifically, let's weed out the CIA. Let's weed out the FBI. Let's make sure we call to the carpet those people who are doing things that are not just unjust, but dishonest, and get an honest conversation. I think that's what the American public demands, is that they have transparency of their government, that their government agencies aren't colluding with the enemy or covering up something that we can learn from, because we want better answers for the things that we fund.
But it's kind of like whack-a-mole. I mean, every time you turn around, there's another scandal over here. There's more information coming out over here. And in fact, you've been heavily focused on the chaos at the southern border, particularly as an entry point for known terrorists. You know, what is the way forward here? What does the Biden administration need to do to address the crisis at our border?
The only thing the Biden administration can do to address the border is to get out. In other words, we need to replace him. He's not going to do it. He already knows this is unpopular, even with his own party. You have sanctuary cities saying, enough, we can't handle it. When a sanctuary city says, we want to send them to the country, you know there's a big problem. When the cities that have thought it was such a great idea, though they had to deal with it, all of a sudden the realities hit them, they don't have a place to keep them. Then when you have nothing but consumers, nobody producing something, when they're consuming, whether it be food, shelter, they're not working, they're not legally allowed to work. stay in Mexico was the right thing to do. And now we're literally having billion-dollar grants with no bidding process, providing people at a very expensive rate, more than you and I would go on a vacation with, for very meager accommodations with no hope of staying here in the long term because they're not here legally. And the only way for them to stay here will be through avoiding any sort of contact with the legal system because they're going to be deported if we follow the law.
Right.
And if we're not following the law, why are they here to begin with?
I mean, that's part of the humanitarian crisis. Of course, we've got the children that have just been lost, the tens of thousands of children that have been lost. We've got the drugs coming over. We've got the terrorists coming over. And you're right. I was on the border during the Trump administration's policy of remain in Mexico, and it looked like a ghost town. It was working back then. Congressman, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. Great to see you. Appreciate your insight.
My pleasure. God bless you, and Semper Fidelis.
Semper Fi. Congressman McCormick of Georgia. All right. A major international religious freedom summit took place last week in Taiwan. It's important issue of religious freedom internationally. It's something that's been neglected under this administration. FRC's Ariel Del Turco was there, spoke at the forum. She joins me next with a report on her trip to Taiwan. Don't go away.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
This is Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. The website, tonyperkins.com. As I mentioned earlier, coming up this weekend, the Pray Vote Stand Summit begins Friday morning. So just a couple of days away, but you still have time to be a part of it. You can register online at prayvotestand.org. We've got, it's going to be a great weekend. Friday night, we're going to hear from former President Donald Trump. We're going to hear from Governor DeSantis. Mike Pence. Vivek is going to be with us. Senator Josh Hawley. We'll have several members of Congress that are going to be on various panels informing you of what's going on. Dr. Ben Carson is going to be here. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's really stirred things up in that state, taking on the education system. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. He's the one that's been on the program quite a bit. He's successfully gone after the Biden administration on their censorship of free speech. Pastor Jack Hibbs, Gary Hamrick, Oz Guinness, Riley Gaines, the swimmer. She's going to be with us. So anyway, and a lot more. Go to prayvotestand.org to get a full listing and to register. Again, that's prayvotestand.org. Last week, the Taiwan International Religious Freedom Forum took place in Taipei, where officials, dignitaries, lawmakers, and faith leaders from around the world gathered to confront and expose religious persecution throughout the world. You know, this was something that the United States was taking the lead on during the Trump administration, but it's fallen to the wayside. You know, and you think about the locations for this meeting last week, I can't think of a better place to hold this forum than on the island of Taiwan under the shadow of the Chinese Communist Party, as they are boldly standing for religious freedom and for freedom of all people. In fact, the president of the parliament there gave me an award for being sanctioned by the Chinese, and I was unable to make it to Taiwan, but we sent someone who was much more capable of dealing with the issue of international religious freedom, the director of our Center for Religious Liberty here at the Family Research Council, Ariel Del Turco. Ariel, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So if you fall asleep, I'll know it's jet lag.
Just that.
Well, give us a quick interview of, number one, or an overview, the purpose of the forum and the outcome.
Yeah, well, the purpose was to gather leaders on this issue and politicians who want to advance the cause of religious freedom. And it's such an important region because Asia is sadly a bit of a hotbed for persecution. You've got China, you've got North Korea, you've got Burma, you've got other places that are really struggling, and Christians and others who are struggling there. So it was gathered there, but you were exactly right. It was in a free country, the country of Taiwan, which has really taken up this issue of religious freedom, and they are eager to be champions on this. And it's a very unique setting because it's in a Chinese-speaking country, very close to China, an island not very far away, and yet it's so very different, and it's really a model of how countries can embrace religious freedom, can embrace political freedoms. Only 30 years ago, this country was under martial law. So it's really a model for the rest of Asia.
How many different countries were represented there?
Oh, dozens of countries across Asia and also across the world. We had representatives from Africa telling their story, talking about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria and elsewhere. We had representatives from North Korea, from Europe.
So, Ariel, answer this question. You know, some would say, well, you know, I know your Family Research Council, you're focused on policy in the United States, and I know you work on religious freedom because that obviously is important. Why would you go to Taiwan?
Yeah, well, the United States actually has an outsized impact. What happens here matters, but also our foreign policy has a great impact around the world, and that's for good or bad. So as Christians who care about government, we need to be focused on making sure that our foreign policy is upholding godly values, upholding American values like religious freedom, and exporting that around the world. And sadly, this is totally diminished under the Biden administration. It has long-standing.
And what happens internationally when you build allies, like being there and we've already seen this with Taiwan, we're building allies there so that, like in the United Nations, we're not crazy about these global forums, but we know that there are outcomes there. And so we want to build these alliances to advocate for religious freedom or sanctity of human life. And in the absence of an administration that does that, we have to have voices of other countries. And we are kind of, in many ways, conducting a choir.
You're right. When the Biden administration is failing, it's really on activists, it's on other countries to pick up the torch, to carry the torch for religious freedom. And Taiwan is happy to do that. And so it's great for FRC to be able to go over there, to support them, to affirm them in that leadership on this issue. So
very quickly, what were some of the outcomes?
One of the outcomes is just connecting politicians there with activists from around the world. I think they were very inspired. They were very ready to take action. And so are many of the activists. We shared ideas on what we can advocate for. And I think there's going to be great outcomes from this event.
So did you enjoy the food?
Oh, it was great.
I bet you met, Travis, who's frequently on the program, he loves to try new food. So he's probably jealous that he didn't get food. Did you bring anything back in your suitcase for him?
No food, sadly.
Okay.
I don't think it was allowed, but I'm sure he's disappointed.
Well, welcome back. Thanks for going. Appreciate you representing FRC.
Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, on the other side of the break, we're going to take a look at this $6 billion that has gone to Iran, and we're also going to look at Kim Jong-un and his visit to Russia. Retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin joins me next here on Washington Watch. Don't go away. A lot more yet to come. It begins here, and here, and here. Every day. Before you stand, you need solid ground. Standing in a culture that wants you to surrender the truth won't work unless you have a firm foundation. At Family Research Council, we have that firm foundation, and you can find us standing. We stand for the value of all human life. We stand for the right of families to flourish. And every day we stand for your freedom to believe and to live out those beliefs both at home and abroad. We work with government officials, educating them on the issues from a biblical worldview. And when necessary, we hold them accountable. We equip Christians across America to be informed and to take action in their communities. With our daily radio program, television appearances, and vast online presence, we reach people where they are. We envision an America where all human life is valued, families flourish, and religious liberty thrives. And that won't be realized if we're not standing. Stand for faith. Stand for family. Stand for freedom. Stand with us at FRC. I'm often asked by people, Tony, how do you stay encouraged? How do you deal with all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., the negative policies that are attacking our faith, our family, and our freedoms? Well, you want me to let you in on the secret? It's called the Word of God. And that is why the Family Research Council embarked on Stand on the Word, a 2-year journey through the Bible. It's a chronological Bible reading plan with just 10 to 15 minutes a day. In 2 years, you will have covered the entire Bible. And to go along with this, Monday through Friday, I do a morning devotional that goes along with the reading of the day. It's all designed to encourage you on this journey because the Word of God, as the psalmist said, in my affliction, here's my comfort. Your Word gives me life. That is our source of strength. To find out more, go to TonyPerkins.com or frc.org/Bible. And I invite you to join me every morning for our Stand on the Word Bible devotion.
This fall, believers from across America will gather in our nation's capital. We'll hear from government leaders, policy experts, and leading Christian voices, learning how we can engage in government at every level, from local school boards to state legislatures to Congress and even the White House, to win back the soul of our nation. Join with us for the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. Believe and engage, September 15th through 17th. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org. FRC celebrating 40 years with Congresswoman Lisa McClain.
In Congress, it's tough, and you get hit. You get bombs thrown at you from all different sides, and at times you have a tendency to get down. FRC approaches things in a very different way. It approaches it with a faith-based principle, in a faith-based manner, which is really lacking not only in Congress, but I would say in America today. FRC is an organization that provides an optimistic, hopeful, positive view of the future.
Welcome back. That was Congresswoman Lisa McClain, and I appreciate her. There's so many men and women that have been drawn here to our nation's capital. I've watched this over my 20 years here, who feel called, that God has called them here to our nation's capital. We have more born-again, Bible-believing Christians serving in Congress now than probably ever before. Now, they're not in the majority, but they're certainly having an impact. And as she said, we are different. We're not like many of the other groups, even the conservative groups. We're not about making headlines. We're about making history by investing in the things that matter, and that's in people's lives, and that's in the policies. And it's not always seen today. It could be years down the road when you actually see the outcome of that. But you can be a part of the Pray Vote Stand Summit and meet some of these individuals, hear what's happening, and how you can be a part of the solution. It's not just enough to complain. We've got to be equipped. We've got to be encouraged. We've got to be prayed up. We've got to vote, and we've got to stand for truth. And that's what the Pray Vote Stand Summit's all about. Find out more. Go to prayvotestand.org. Well, yesterday on the program, I discussed President Biden's agreement to release $6 billion, that's with a B, dollars to Iran as a part of the hostage exchange program with the terrorist regime. Now, the White House continues to defend the deal, which will subsidize Iran's terrorism and nuclear weapons capabilities, while also guaranteeing its regime will continue to seize more hostages in the future. It incentivizes it. Well, joining me now to continue our discussion from yesterday, as well as touch on other international issues of concern, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who serves as FRC's Executive Vice President. General Boykin spent the last 4 years of his 36-and-a-half-year military career serving as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. General, welcome back.
I'm glad to be with you.
So let me start with a clip. We talked about it yesterday, but it had not yet aired. This was the president of Iran, President Raisi, on NBC, basically saying that they'll do whatever they want with the money. Let's play clip number 11.
This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally, we will decide, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it.
So pushing back on that today was John Kirby. He's the coordinator for strategic communications at the National Security Council in the White House. He said this in response to that clip 5.
The Iranian people will be the beneficiaries of these funds, not the regime. The regime doesn't get to touch the money, Peter. Doesn't go to them. They don't get to decide ultimate destination, and they have no direct access to it.
General, I'm speechless. Does he really believe what he is saying?
Tony, I don't know how he could. Look, this guy's been around a long time. He's been a press secretary for a long time. And I don't see how he could possibly believe what he is saying, given the track record of the Iranians, given the track record of what they've done with the JCPOA, for example. That was a rock-solid agreement, supposedly. And look what they've done. They have violated just about every provision within the JCPOA. No, the one that's telling the truth here is actually the Iranian president, Raisi.
How would the regime not have control of the money?
It doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to that. First of all, I think everybody knows that even if this was America, there is no way once that money is released that you have any control over it. And I would bet you that there are going to be some people in this administration in Iran today that are going to become wealthy people overnight.
I want to play another clip because obviously people are saying the same things we talked about yesterday. This is only going to incentivize bad behavior. And how do you know that this is only going to be used for humanitarian purposes, which is what the U.S. is claiming? Play clip number 3.
If Iran tries to divert the funds, we'll take action, and we'll lock them up again. I also want to be clear. This is not a payment of any kind. It's not ransom. These aren't U.S. taxpayer dollars.
So I guess they can probably put toothpaste back in the tube again, too, right?
Yeah, well, this is the same regime now, keep in mind, the same administration that probably is responsible for the most abysmal foreign policy event in my lifetime, and that was Afghanistan. This is the same organization there, or administration, that has made so many bad mistakes, so many bad decisions, so many things that have cost our reputation in the world. And now we are asked to believe them. You know, what really ticks me off about this, Tony, is when Kirby says, well, go ask the parents of this person, well, how they feel about it. They don't make foreign policy in this country. It's not their responsibility. I am sorry for them. Right. I really am. I want to see their children home as well. But to say that to an American citizen, especially somebody in the media, is just, I think it's just unforgivable for him to do that and pull that card.
It's a lack of leadership.
It is absolutely a lack of leadership.
Because there's another way to bring Americans home. We talked about it yesterday. That is to put America first and to have a strong military. Ronald Reagan understood that. You saw that serving under Ronald Reagan. That strength gains respect. Weakness is exploited. And that's what this is. This is exploiting America. And the idea that once they've turned these monies over to Qatar, and they're going to be distributing them, they're not going to be able to get this money back once it starts flowing.
Yeah, and look, you got to look at Ronald Reagan through the lens of Americans that want to put America first. You got to look at Ronald Reagan that way, because he was the same. He didn't talk about it in those terms. But when the Russians and the Cubans were building airfields down on a little island off the north coast of South America that would put those planes within reach of America, Ronald Reagan said, not in my hemisphere and not on my watch. And he sent the military down there to clean that place up, turn it back over. And there were repeated things that he did like that. And it got to the point where nobody was going to challenge him anymore.
And Trump was the same way.
He was exactly the same way.
And I'm not saying that other Republican leaders that we've had would not take action, but those two presidents when they would take action, it was to win.
It was all out. It was all or nothing as far as they were concerned. And they sent what was needed, and in most cases, what was asked for by the commanders on the ground. That was a basic principle. And they intended that we were going to win. Whatever it took, we were going to win.
And that was a big break. I mean, going back to really Korea, where we started this containment policy in terms of our military engagement, to contain, not to actually win.
That is exactly right, and that was such a shock to the World War II veterans, you know, that we were in a war that we could not say we had won, and there was there were a lot of lives, American lives, lost in Korea too, but you had Harry Truman. Look, give him hell, Harry, you know, who. I don't think did what he should have done until he got down to the very end there, and he realized that this war will go on and we're going to lose another 1 million Americans was the estimate at the time, and he went all out. It's all or nothing on what we're about to do here. But since him, we haven't really had a president until Reagan came along that really understood that. Even Eisenhower, you know.
Well, let's transition, because I don't want to run out of time again today. We ran out of time yesterday. I want to go to Russia, this meeting with the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, taking a field trip to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. What are we to make of this? What do we know?
Well, obviously, Kim Jong-un wants to be in the headlines. He wants to be back in the public eye, and but there are some real issues here, and they're concerning. We need to take this very seriously, because he does have a nuclear capability. Where he's suffering is with his missiles, and that's one of the things that he wants from the Russians. He wants technology that will help him to build the missiles that would be able to deliver nuclear warheads. And he also, for years, he's been getting oil from the Russians. So he is very dependent upon them, and I think he, among other things, he wants to make sure that that relationship is solid. And what Putin wants from him is he wants artillery rounds, he wants small arms ammunition, and anything else that they have that would help him to overcome the Ukrainians.
So North Korea has the manufacturing capability to turn that out?
They have the capability. They've also got big stockpiles. They've got a lot of stockpiles. Remember, they got their tactics largely from Russia, and Russia is one who believes just fire as much artillery as you can. This goes back to World War II. Fire as much artillery as you can. Deplete everything that your enemy has on the ground, deplete it, and then make your attack. And that's what we trained for the folded gap, as it was called, that we expected to fight if we had another war. And so that's what the Russians want from him, is they want that artillery that will give them the opportunity to do just that. And they have already fired over 1 million rounds of artillery based on the numbers that I've seen.
So will this accelerate North Korea's ability to have an effective missile?
If they give them the technology, the missile technology, if the Russians do that, then yes, of course.
Because Russia now is, what does Russia have to lose? They're isolated from the rest of the world. They need this. They need these munitions. Where else should they turn? China is not as responsive. North Korea, as you said, Kim Jong-un is looking for headlines, but he's looking for a friend. And if he can advance his missile technology, it's a win-win for him.
Well, you look at it, he and Putin both have become pariahs.
They have.
They are isolated now. And China's playing both sides. China's doing some funny stuff, like when he had this big leaders meeting with the leaders in the Central Asian region. They're the not Afghanistan, but Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and all that. And he didn't invite Putin to that after he had just left Putin's headquarters and told him, we're going to see a new day dawning. We're going to see a situation that we haven't seen in 100 years between the two of us. And then he went off and invited all these other people to a meeting and left Putin out. So Putin's got to realize he's being played, and the Chinese are just playing him like a fiddle.
We just got about a minute left, General, but as we see this progressing, now that we're way into this Ukrainian war, these alliances, the shifting of the international geopolitical board, are we at a much more volatile point, or are there more danger points around the world that we need to be watching?
I think there is, because there's so many political shifts now. The power shifts that are taking place now. And look, make no mistake, our biggest enemy, our most dangerous and threatening enemy is China. But Russia's not too far behind them, and particularly given the man that is in charge of Russia right now, because I think he is getting desperate. He has been a total failure in terms of doing what he intended to do and expected to do with the Ukrainians. And it's embarrassed him on all fronts. His own soldiers are killing their leaders, and some of them are even getting out of their tanks and walking back to Belarus. That's a huge embarrassment for him. So, in fact, if you look at yesterday's paper, there was some propaganda out about how all these young people, young men in Russia, are rushing down to the recruiting stations, so they can sign up and fight in this glorious war. That's not true.
More propaganda, kind of what we see coming out of our government.
It is.
General, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here.
All right, folks, reason to pray. We need to be praying. We live in a very volatile time, but there's no reason for us, as followers of Christ, to be disturbed. We can have peace in the midst of all this. Jesus said these things were going to unfold, And we need to keep our eyes on him. We need to be prayed up. We need to be read up on the Scripture, and we need to be engaged in the world around us. All right, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, I leave you with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, prepared, taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.
Hi, I'm Joe Sweeney. I founded the Acervo Project in response to the growing epidemic of human trafficking and child exploitation. Classifying this as an epidemic is an understatement. Our investigation teams and cyber analysts are tracking child predators every day. We're making a difference, but we need your help. The average age of a trafficked child is just 14 years old. Will you join the Acervo Project team? Donate $14 a month to protect the next at-risk 14-year-old. Pledge your $14 a month at theacervoproject.org. That's ASSERVO.org.